Okay, I think we're recording.
All
I'll go back.
right.
Uh,
So,
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I think I've met most of you, but for those that I haven't yet, my name is Sam Winter. I'm the Natural Resources Volunteer Coordinator here in the Monterey District for California State Parks. Um, if you are kind of new to volunteering with our district, welcome. Our district kind of covers, we've got 18 different parks kind of stretching all along the coast from Madowski State Beach all the way down to Moss Landing. And we do all kinds of fun volunteer projects all over the place. And the Snowy Plover Guardian Program is one of our natural resources volunteer programs. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for continuing to grow this volunteer program with us. This is sort of just a little bit of background. This is, I think, maybe, gosh, really the second year since we've kind of rebooted this program. And we're excited to kind of see how it grows. This is the first time we've done like an overwinter season specific kind of training, and a second kind of round of Plover Guardian recruitment. So we're excited to kind of see how this goes. But I think with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Esther. This training today is going to be a lot less. That'll be shorter than the one that we do kind of in the spring. So, or if you watch the recording of that video, we're really going to try to kind of hone in on some of our overwintering kind of specific tips and guidelines and information for the public. So hopefully this will be a little bit of a refresher, but also there should be some good new information in here too. So I think with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Esther, our wildlife biologist here in the Monterey District. She is a wealth of knowledge about snowy plover. Yeah, I think with that, Esther.
yeah, all right. So like Sam said, I'm Esther Hale. I'm a state parks environmental scientist with a focus on mostly our plovers, and do a lot of monitoring. And I've been monitoring and surveying our species for almost 10 years now. So gotta love these little guys. Um, But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go off camera, and then start our presentation. So this is our Winter 2023 Snowy Plover Guardian Program training. The first winter training I think we've had, so we're gonna do our best. And so I've got a quick agenda for everybody. We're gonna go a little bit over Snowy Plover overwintering natural history, which there's not terribly much new information there, I think. Not as in-depth anyway as the breeding season, so that'll go pretty quickly. We'll look at the difference between wintering plovers and sanderlings, as well as then going into some Monterey-specific overwintering info and some site-specific logistics. We'll do a bit of refreshers on the dog regulations at the beaches that are of interest for you guys, as well as talk about some updated messaging for winter, as well as go over some responses to common comments that I've heard, and then go into getting some suggestions from you guys about what's coming up next. So let's go ahead and start with our snowy plover overwintering natural history. And so plovers winter from Oregon to Baja California, which is pretty similar to their breeding range, though that actually extends into Washington and doesn't tend to include parts of Baja California. So we can see on the map here that the orange and teal green color are where they are found in winter. And researchers have found that between 25 and 40% of plovers will remain year-round in their breeding sites, and this number tends to average to be around 30% at most sites. And males also have a higher overwintering presence than females in their breeding sites as well. In Monterey, what we found is that we have 41% of males who will stay and 24% of females. Plovers will also migrate both north and south of their breeding sites to arrive at their wintering habitat. Plovers generally are seen flocking in the winter, unless they're out feeding on invertebrates and kelp flies. They really like to hang out in these small depressions in sand. We often see them in footprints, and flocks can be quite large. We've seen flocks as large as 150, though on average the flock size tends to be anywhere between 15 to 60 birds. They will also flock with other birds, not just plovers. We've seen them mingle with sanderlings, other species of plovers, and a couple of other shorebirds as well. During the earlier part of the winter season, plovers are a bit flighty, and so they'll leave more easily when disturbed. But once the winter season really gets fully started, they seem to tolerate people walking by a little bit closer than during the breeding season. Most of our birds that migrate for the winter remain in California, and they tend to go south, though we have a few that will go to the San Francisco area. The farthest south that I found our birds to go is San Diego, but I only looked at the last few years. And we also rely on other plover monitors and bird watchers to report our birds to us, so we don't necessarily know where every single bird overwinters. And so we may have some that winter much further south or much further north than what I've actually listed here in our sites. But we do also get a fair number of birds that stop over and overwinter here in Monterey Bay. And then a number of our vacationing birds actually arrive from Oregon and other Northern California sites. But we do get a couple that come up from the south. We have a number of birds that arrive from San Diego and Santa Barbara for the winter. So now to just go into a little bit of the differences between plovers and sanderlings during winter. This is our lovely snowy plover. And so plovers have this really small dark beak and gray legs. In winter, they're kind of a pale gray, brown, or tannish. Males lose their breeding plumage, and so they look really similar to females to the point where you really can't tell them apart. And they weigh roughly 40 grams. I usually describe them as self-running tennis balls. And they tend to forage, either alone or loosely in a group with others. Plovers are often seen flocking together near the base of dunes and sometimes flocking with other species. They winter from mid-August to early March when their breeding season begins again. Plovers start migrating to their breeding grounds during February and March, with the breeding season beginning in earnest in late March and early April. Sanderlings, though, in winter, they have a long dark beak and black legs. They're a pale gray with a bit of a darker gray at the shoulders. They weigh around 60 pounds, so that makes them a fair bit larger than plovers. I usually use the analogy that they're the softball compared to a plover tennis ball, so that's kind of like the size difference between the two. And they tend to forage in really large groups with their beaks going in and out of the sand, probing for aquatic invertebrates that have just been deposited by tides, or they'll probe further into the sand to look for hidden amphipods and crustaceans. And because of this, we often see them going at the tide line, going in and out with the waves. But luckily, sanderlings are not present much during the plover breeding season, so the confusion between the two species doesn't usually last for very long. They are here from mid-August and leave around early May to go to their own breeding sites to the north. And so this is just a nice side-by-side of wintering sanderlings and plovers. So we can really see the beak difference for size and color when they're next to each other. When you're out on the beach in the wild and you don't have binoculars, it can be a little bit harder to tell, but their behaviors are really quite different. But we also have a couple of other birds that could be confused with overwintering plovers. That includes the semi-palmated plovers, the black-bellied plovers, and killdeer. Both black-bellied plovers and killdeer are quite a bit bigger than snowies, as well as having a longer beak. But the semi-palmated plovers are much closer in shape and color as our snowies, and they have a much similar beak size. But they are a darker tan, and they also have a lighter tannish color leg. Semi-palmated plovers also are, they're not necessarily rare, but they're not super common in Monterey. I have noticed a few hanging out in recent years, but generally you can kind of see the difference between the two, particularly when you have enough snowy plovers to really compare in the area. And so for our Monterey specific information, this is just a quick chart and graph of our overwintering plovers that we've been seeing for the past 10 years. We have a larger number of plovers overwintering in the Monterey district than we usually see in the Santa Cruz district of state parks. And we have fairly good numbers that are slowly increasing, though they're still not as high as they were in the 2015-2016 winter season. And that was the season right before we started having our crow and raven issues beginning. So that drop in population, overwintering population, isn't a shock, but it is, we're slowly making our way back up to those numbers. So for our beaches of interest where we know we have plovers flocking, this is Carmel River State Beach, and we tend to have plovers on both the north and the south side of the river mouth, which I've tried to estimate where they're usually found in these red polygons. So hopefully that's pretty accurate, but it gives a place to start looking. We also have Monterey State Beach, and the usual area for flocking plovers is north, right around here, north of the Tides Hotel, as well as just north of Bay Avenue over here. We currently have some construction happening on West Bay Avenue, which could influence the plovers that used to flock at West Bay to be flocking back over here north of the Tides Hotel. But access for humans anyway is still open at West Bay, but it is impacted by that construction. For anyone who's interested in looking at plovers or talking to dog owners at other beaches other than Carmel River State Beach and Monterey State Beach, then Moss Landing State Beach and Madowski State Beach are two sites that could be considered. At Moss Landing State Beach, we tend to see the flock up at the access. This is Jetty Road, and we see most up here at the northernmost access, but they can be seen all along these access points that are between this northern access and the jetty. For Madowski State Beach, the plovers tend to flock along the Pajaro River mouth, and I believe we have a large number mostly seen on the south side of the Pajaro River, which can be accessed from the Madowski State Beach parking lot off of Giberson Road. And if you do happen to read band colors and you want to report them, please email me the band colors, or if you took photos or anything like that, feel free to email me at either of these websites, either of these emails, so esther.hale@parks.ca.gov or at ehale@pointblue.org, and I'll be able to put those sightings into our records. So for our site-specific logistics, we no longer have lifeguards or plover beach fencing on our beaches. So this includes no longer having the portable no dog signs that were out with the lifeguards. And this also means that state parks no longer has as much of a visual presence on the beach. And this might encourage some people to start bringing their dogs on the beach or to enter closed areas. We've also removed the beach fencing, But plovers, of course, are still on the beach, and just because we no longer have the fencing off specific areas doesn't mean that they've left. Um, though Monterey State Beach does actually have a permanent fencing up for dune restoration. It just moves in and out for the plover breeding season. So a combination of no more lifeguards and beach fencing means that plovers and park rules are not likely to be at the forefront of beachgoers' minds. But no matter what, safety should always be your top priority. You should always be sure that someone knows where you are and to check in with that person at the end of your shift so that they know you're safe. It's helpful to also look at tide charts before you leave. Now that we're getting into the winter, we have more beach erosion as well as a lot of higher tides and more storms. So it's very possible that beaches are not accessible or are only accessible at lower tides. And you can always change monitoring days if tides are too high for it to be safe. Other beach safety that we wanted to include is not turning your back on the ocean. This is particularly important in the winter when we have larger swells and higher tides due to storms. It's also why staying away from river beaches and river breaches, I should say, and river mouths is also important for safety. Tides can affect how strong the river current is, and the depth that you see can be very deceptive. So be careful and be aware of tides if you decide to approach rivers. And then also, we want to remind everyone to drink water and wear sunscreen, even or wear sun protection in general, even in winter. And if you feel unsafe approaching a dog owner for whatever reason, you don't have to approach. Just wait until you are in a safe place and then you can call it into dispatch. And I really want to reiterate that I do mean for whatever reason. And so this could be because the dog owner is being really loud, or the dog breed is one that makes you uncomfortable, or it could just be as simple as you're getting bad vibes from that person. Whatever you need to do, just stay safe. We also want you to feel empowered to just end an interaction if it's getting heated. So if someone is getting really angry, you can just go ahead and let them go. Don't have to keep talking to them, just walk away. So Carmel River State Beach is one of our main monitoring beaches for plover guardians. We mentioned that the river mouth can be dangerous and to stay away from river mouths. If the river mouth is closed, like it is in this photo, then it is safe to pass and walk through. However, if the river is open, meaning that the river is flowing freely into the ocean, then it's best not to try to ford the river or walk through the river and to just stay away. However, we might have dog walkers on the south side of the river, and so you might want to go and access from the south. And you can do that by parking and accessing from Calle La Cruz or Crusta Way over in Carmel. And so we're going to get into some dog regulations at our beaches of interest. And so of course, our two main beaches are Carmel State River, Rivers, Carmel River State Beach and Monterey State Beach. So Seaside Beach and I might not say this correctly, but Houghton Roberts Beach together comprise Monterey State Beach, and they are both on the south end of Monterey Bay. So Monterey State Beach, in particular, right here, these two beaches have a high level of dog infraction, and both of these beaches are where our plover guardians are spending a lot of their time interacting and educating dog owners. And so I've found that informing where the nearest dog-friendly beach is has been really successful in having a good interaction with dog owners. And so I always try to inform our dog owners where the nearest dog-friendly beach is, or if they're already at a dog-friendly beach that requires a leash and they want to have their dog off-leash, I'll let them know where the nearest off-leash area is if they express an interest. And I've actually had at least one person tell me that they really appreciate when I give them alternatives instead of just telling them that they can't be on the beach. And yeah, so for Monterey State Beach, um, north of the Tides Hotel to Tioga, that's our no dog zone. And that's the area that's called Seaside Beach. But south of the Tides Hotel, is a dog on leash area. And that's the Houghton Roberts State Beach. And then north of Tioga until the south boundary of the Fort Ord Dunes State Beach is also a dog on leash area, which is very confusing, which is why the map and the brochure is so great. But I always like to make sure to tell them that once they reach that boundary for the Fort Ord Dunes State Beach, they're entering a no dogs area and they need to turn back around. For Carmel River State Beach, that is a beach where dogs are allowed on beach, but Carmel City Beach allows dogs off leash and is quite close by. And so these are the two closest beaches for Monterey State Beach. And this is where we see Seaside Beach is where we see most of our infractions. And for Carmel River State Beach, Carmel City Beach is the closest dog-friendly off-leash beach. I also wanted to go ahead and mention that county and city have local ordinances that describe dog leash laws in public spaces, and not all ordinances are the same for each city. But I wanted to mention these so that you know what they are. You don't need to cite these when you're talking to dog owners. This is just extra information for you. For Monterey County, pets need to be on leash on county property unless otherwise designated. They also limit the length of the leash, though most leashes are usually already within that range. For Sand City, their ordinances also require dogs to be on leash and for the leash to actually be held in hand or tied to a post. Otherwise, they are considered a dog at large, and this is a bit of a broader ordinance than the county ordinance, as they apply this to almost all public spaces, including city beaches. For Carmel by the sea, that's an exception to the ordinance rules, as they do allow dogs to be off leash so long as the dog is well under control on city beaches and parks. However, dog owners are supposed to have their leash on hand when the dog is under voice command, just in case they need to quickly put them on leash. And this doesn't mean that dogs are allowed off leash on state properties within Carmel City limits, but it is why dogs are allowed off leash on Carmel City Beach. And it might cause some confusion for visitors when they're visiting Carmel River State Beach. And of course, there are exceptions to our dog rules, and those are service animals. These are usually dogs that are trained. Oh, well, I shouldn't say usually. These are dogs that are trained to perform a specific task that is directly related to the individual's disability. They're not emotional support animals, and an emotional support animal is not given the same exception as service dogs. Service animals are usually very calm animals that remain close to their owners. They may or may not be wearing a vest that announces their status, which can make it sometimes very difficult to know if an animal is performing a service or not until you're told. And they don't need to be on leash either if it would interfere with their task. I usually decide to believe that dogs is a service animal when I've been told that they are. However, if there is any doubt, we can ask only 2 questions to determine if an animal is actually a service animal. And the questions we can ask include, is the animal required because of a disability? Which is a question that I don't usually ask personally. And we can ask, what work or task has the animal been trained to perform? Which is what I do ask. And I've found that if you're really friendly, and you're genuine in your question, then the owner will have no issue telling you what the dog is trained for. And so I feel like most of our messaging will be very, very familiar or just seem like common sense. But here's some refresher for our updated messaging. So in winter, birds are resting and recovering. They do this at their wintering sites, and their wintering sites are just where birds are found for the entirety of winter, and that can be either their breeding sites or a site that they migrate to. And birds may also stop and rest for a short period of time before continuing on their migration route at stopover sites. These temporary wintering sites are very important for migrating birds as they need to stop and eat while on the move. They migrate to places that have higher food sources so that they can restore their fat reserves. This is usually in climates that are warmer than their breeding sites are during winter. During winter, our plovers are resting and recovering from a very long breeding season and getting ready for the next breeding season, which is why it's so detrimental when birds are harassed by dogs and also humans while they're resting. It causes a bird to use up their energy reserves that they need to make the return migration and to be in good health for the next breeding season. After all, caring for eggs and chicks is not an easy task, and they need to be ready for that. We also have our beaches serving a large community of people, some of whom come from quite far to get here. And one of our services is a calm experience where our guests can escape urbanization, see and hear wildlife, and relax in a calm environment. Unfortunately, dogs can often ruin that experience for people. A loud dog barking can scare off wildlife or drown out ocean waves. Forgotten poop bags and tennis balls can ruin the look of our beaches and make the experience less enjoyable by being surrounded by trash. We also have to remember that some people have a fear of dogs or just plain don't like dogs. They don't want to be approached by dogs or be scared while they're on vacation. We also want our doggy visitors to have a calm experience, which is why there are dog-friendly beaches. One of the main reasons that dogs are not allowed on the beach or are required to remain on leash is for the safety of the dog themselves and wildlife. Many people seem to not realize that our beaches are still wild spaces. While we manage our beaches and create a great recreational space for our beach visitors, we mainly manage our beaches for the benefit of wildlife. This means that animals like skunks, coyotes, even foxes use these spaces. And these animals are wild. They may be aggressive to dogs. In fact, I've actually watched a pack of coyote be aggressive to a dog owner and two German shepherds when they were near a whale carcass. Luckily, they were just trying to scare the dogs away and have them leave the area, but it was still kind of frightening to see. But we also want to protect our wildlife from dogs. I've mentioned before that we've had instances of plover chicks being smothered by dogs or nests being eaten. And not only that, but not all dogs are friendly, and interactions between dogs can also have bad outcomes. Unfortunately, not all owners leash unfriendly dogs, or they know that their dogs can be aggressive but still refuse to leash them. I've had an interaction with a dog owner who purposefully brought a non-neutered, untrained dog onto the beach and didn't have it on a leash. Luckily, he understood that it wasn't a beach where dogs are even supposed to be, and he left when I told him to, but just goes to show that people don't always do what makes common sense. And there are also some dogs that look friendly up until they're approached, or who are friendly to people but are aggressive to other dogs. At the end of the day, it's the owners who are responsible for injuries or damages caused by their dogs. We're also concerned about what dogs interact with on the beach in terms of dead wildlife that wash up on the beaches. Dogs are opportunistic scavengers, which means that when they come across a potential food source, a dog's first instinct is to scavenge and eat, which can lead to, which can be an issue even at home for some dogs. This behavior can be trained out, but it's still an instinct that they have. The problem is that dead wildlife may contain toxins or parasites that can harm dogs, not to mention illnesses that can be transferred. There's also a chance that dogs playing in the ocean will be exposed to bacteria or events like red tides or harmful algal blooms. Some of the toxins released during these blooms are known to damage dogs' organs and can cause vomiting, seizures, or respiratory issues. But we're not just concerned about how our beaches will affect dogs. We're also concerned about how dogs affect beaches. Um, Dog feces left on the beach are highly unsanitary and have been known to cause issues for wildlife and even humans playing, uh, children playing on the beach. Oh, and while many dog owners are responsible, there are many who are not and don't pick up after their dogs, who will bag, but then leave those bags of dog feces on the beach or in a park. Not only does this not remove dog feces, but it also leaves plastic in the environment. I feel the most important message that we can try to get across is that dogs should at least be leashed. If you can't convince a dog owner to leave a no dog beach, then we can at least ask them to leash their dogs. I've unfortunately come across a number of dog owners who didn't even bring a leash when walking their dogs on the beach, including beaches where dogs are not allowed. So, having this message of it's better to have a leashed dog than an unleashed dog. And always remember to stay safe when talking to dog owners with our updated messages. As well as if you see anyone doing something unsafe, such as climbing on rocks or trying to cross a fast-flowing river, you can remind other beachgoers of basic safety and park rules. Okay, yeah, so feel empowered to talk to people who are not using common sense, basically, was the message. Um, and then, so going into some common comments that I've seen and heard, I also want everybody in the chat to be able to, if you've got other common comments that you've heard that you want to talk about and we can discuss at the end, feel free to share. And so, this is kind of a funny one to me because dogs do harm birds, and while they are a member of the family, if the dog is alone, they would act like a dog and they would chase and harass birds for fun. They might not bite or kill a bird, but they can still harm a bird by scaring it and making it use up all of that energy reserve to fly away and try to escape. So, the message that I would have is while a dog may not actively chase birds, their mere presence has been shown to increase the probability of a shorebird being disturbed or leaving an area. And we want to remind people that dogs are predator shaped. A bird will not recognize the difference between a domestic dog and a coyote. And it's always fun to have someone tell you how long they've been ignoring the rules of the park that they visit. Often I'll have someone tell me that I've been bringing my dog to the beach for X number of years, and no one has ever talked to me before or told me that I can't. And I find this mixture of easy and difficult to believe this. In some areas and at certain times of the day, it's really easy for a dog owner to just slip in and off the beach, so they may have never been talked to. However, we have numerous signs out, and other areas have higher park presence. So depending on where I am, this comment is more likely to be true than in other areas. However, they should still be checking the signs and the park's website for information on where they can take their dogs before even leaving their house. A number of people who say this comment will also say that there were no signs at the access points. If they accessed from a state park's access and not a neighboring non-state park's beach, or from off trail, illegally off trail, then there are signs, and we can inform them that there are signs and that they just missed them. So the message here is just that while it's great that you take your dog for walks in nature, the rules of the beach mean that an alternative park would be a better option. There are some beaches where dogs are allowed, and I have a brochure with a map if you're interested. And this is a great segue to offering the brochure to someone. And so this is another interesting comment. Having a dog on a vocal or electrical leash indicates that their dog is very well trained. But the fact is that a well-trained dog can still override that training, however rare that might be, and then harm animals, other dogs, or people. So when responding to this type of comment, I think the best thing to do is to frame it with the dog's behavior in a positive way, talking about how well behaved the dog is, and then remind the owners of state parks rules. So this would be something like, well, it's wonderful that your dog is trained to respond to vocal commands, or you have an e-leash. California State Parks does not recognize them as proper leashes. Only physical leashes are currently approved. And I actually had to double check on the e-leashes because that was something I had never even heard of or seen before this year. But apparently they exist, and it's kind of interesting, but I don't trust them any more than I would trust voice command. And so physical leashes are the only ones that are actually approved by California State Parks for our beaches where dogs are allowed on leash. And this is one of my favorite comments because it just gives you a chance to discuss how birds may look similar, but their actions and habits can help you tell them apart, even when you don't have binoculars. And so many people misidentify sanderlings as plovers, and the easiest way to tell sanderlings apart from plovers is that sanderlings are currently flocking together in really large numbers, and they're often seen running in and out with the tides as they feed. Plovers are also flocking, sometimes in large numbers, but they usually aren't as large of flocks. And plovers like to stay close up to the dunes and hang out in footprints. Um, and so hopefully there are some other comments in the chat. I don't know, Sam, if you um
No comments yet, but if
all
anybody
right.
has any other sort of common, I don't
Common
know,
dog
we
comment or
run
anything like
into.
that. And so in the meantime, we can go into trying to figure out some suggestions for the future of the Plover Guardians, because I'd love to find out more. So I want to know what are your suggestions for the future of the Plover Guardians? Because we're still in the really early years of this program and we can develop it to match your guys' interests as well as continue our dog owner education. So options that I really want to know your guys' opinion on include Saturday tabling event at access points. So this can include information on more than just plovers, so we can talk about beach habitat and restoration efforts, and it would make dog owner education happen before they even enter the beach, which could make for some probably nicer interactions. And then there's also other opportunities for tabling events. So Marina holds an Earth Day festival each year at Loch Padden Park. And CSUMB has multiple occasions where we could have a table to spread the word about joining Plover Guardians and getting talking to uh, the younger generation about plovers and birds. And I'm sure that there are other tabling events that we can also join in on. We were pretty successful this year in a tabling event for the First Friday event that's held at the Santa Cruz Museum of Natural History. And I'd really like to see those efforts continue. I would also like to see if there's any interest in developing or helping to develop Pets for Plovers or a Bark Rangers program for Monterey County. And this would need to have quite a bit of involvement from our volunteers to create and run, but may also bring a new perspective for dog owners and maybe encourage them to join our Plover effort. We could potentially join this with holding presentations and events for dog walking groups. And I'm pretty sure that you guys here can think of other ways that we can spread the word about plovers and have a ton of ideas for making the Plover Guardians a longer lasting program. I really want to hear from you guys and what you want to see for the future of Plover Guardians.
Thank you all so much for being here. Esther, thank you so much for doing the presentation. This for me was so much easier than the spring one where I had to talk about paperwork for like half an hour. So
Oh, I'm
hopefully
sure
more.
this is much more fun when you don't have to talk about paperwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, let me actually one quick thing. I'm going to uh if you need to email me, these are the emails I can be reached at, either one. Um, and you probably already have Sam's email, but yeah, feel free to, if you have questions or you want someone to come survey with you or something like that, feel free to give me a message and I'll get back to you.